anybody else wants to join, I might even take a punt at it myself, actually, guys. If I can get the if I can get the thing to work, I can get this to work. There we go. Look at that. Wow, isn't that incredible? Isn't technology a wonderful thing? Isn't it? Good. All right. Well, thank you guys. It's been a really good day. Really enjoyed today. Actually, learned quite a lot, and the key themes have been very, very clear, I think, which is really cool as well. We're gonna dive straight into the questions, if that's okay. I've got some out maybe that we'll come on to, but there have been a couple that have been hanging around. One or two from a gentleman called John Lucas, who as a community we know very well. And John asks some really good questions, actually. So I'll ask you all, right? Don't need to do in turn, just jump in. Right, first loudest, those who shout loudest get the first answer, right? So John asks about the compatibility with WCAG 2.1. Now John works at a university, as you can imagine, right? So John asks about, and I'll read it out, are all the tools, that's everybody's tool, we didn't speak to the last guys, WCAG 2.1 compliant, including self-service and the main app? Now, I didn't know what that was until I look, and it really is about compliance and accessibility. So it's about building something that's accessible for disabilities, for hearing impaired, for sight impaired. And I think it's a really good question, right? And I don't know what you think about that, guys, accessibility, because if we're moving to these solutions, how do we make sure that all our users can actually use them equitably? It's a really good question. Over to you. And we'll start with Pat, if that's okay, Pat. Sorry, Pat, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yes, at Axios, Assist does provide that WCAG 2.0 compatibility, so we are compliant for that with our solution.
Excellent. Well, that's nice and short. Let's maybe go to Andy.
Yes, we all of our developments bear that in mind, and yeah, it's something that in our early days we already got a lot of questions about, so it was kind of at the forefront of our mind. And we continue to sort of respond to feedback on that as well, because sometimes there are very subtle things like we're all used to perhaps the squiggly red lines and things that you see when we have spelling mistakes and such like. So even sort of addressing that type of issue, because those can be a big problem for someone who's colorblind, for example.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe to Clark. Welcome, Clark.
You're on mute.
I'm really sorry, I joined slightly late, so I didn't quite get the question.
No worries. I'll ask it. I'll tell you what. Then I'll ask it again, and we'll come back to Tom. Maybe really good question from one of our community members asking if all the tools are WCAG 2.1 compliant, including self-service and the main app, which is about the accessibility really. So I'll leave that one with you, and maybe go to Tom. He's had longer to think about it.
Yeah, we're also compliant as well. It's something that, yeah, we've been compliant for a long time. It's really important, especially in a lot of industries. Education is especially one that comes up a lot. And we periodically review it and it's effectively you can run like extensions for the testing for it, and it basically flags up anything that's a lot of it's around kind of color contrast and stuff like that. So it's making sure you're not putting, I don't know, black text on a dark background and things like that. It's and you basically run these extensions in the background and it flags everything up, and we do a periodic check on that.
Fabulous. And lastly, Clark, then, just because John did ask for all the suppliers, right? The other guys have got off the hook. So unfortunately, so Clark, maybe if you could answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So here at Alemba, we are also compliant. We spend a lot of time in the development, just as everyone else has answered here, making sure that we have that ability. And as mentioned, it's very, very important within the education environment, more so than probably anywhere else. And we've got a number of options. So yes, we do tests against that, but the solution gives us the ability to set color palettes. So our marketing and development teams have developed a number of color palettes that we supply to customers for them to check to make sure that that's their, meets their requirements as well, because it's very important to try and match it with also the company's branding as well that we're working with. So we provide those color palettes that match to the corporate environment as well. That gives us that capability.
Thank you for that. Thank you, John. A really good question there. John has got another one which we might come on to actually. We've got another one, and this relates to, we've seen a lot of this today. There's been key themes. We've talked about that really, but it's about the adoption rate of self-service, and we touched upon that briefly, Tom, in the last sort of discussion there really. And it's from Daniel, and he talks about studies have said that 72% of users would prefer self-service themselves rather than raise a ticket. And there is some other stuff there, but I'm going to ask a wider question maybe about self-service and sort of driving that culture. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of enterprise service management, unified service management, self-sufficiency. Historically, that's been difficult to enable, I think, in some organizations. So trying to enable the self-sufficient user, challenge of encouraging self-service adoption, the user experience, obviously, and encouraging users to not only locate knowledge, but use it as well. That old chestnut. And so there's a big push towards this more self-sufficient thing. How do you think organizations should approach those challenges, and how do they get over those challenges? What kind of advice would you give them? And again, we're going to come back to Pat, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. When it comes to, the adoption of self-service, and it is a bit of a struggle for a lot of organizations, because your self-service, you've got the ones that always want to call a person, right, and call the service desk and deal with those directly. But I think one of the key things is, communication and ensuring that, providing your users with why we want you to go to self-service. What's the value behind that? Obviously not waiting on hold with a service desk agent, easy access to update your tickets, easy access to submit requests and services, searching knowledge. So really point out the values to your customers and users on why you should be using self-service in the portal.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd love to spend a lot more time on these answers, guys, in detail. We haven't got that, unfortunately, so I do apologize, right? But if we come maybe to Stephen, welcome, Stephen. This question was about self-service and trying to encourage organizations culturally to adopt it. The challenges that we've seen, the uptake of 1%, even though self-service, channel has been there for maybe, I don't know, 100 years. I don't know. How do you approach that with customer organizations? How do you encourage them along that journey to becoming more self-serving?
Yeah, it can be a difficult conversation because you're fighting against every other self-service portal that they've implemented for every other tool that they've tried to implement, not just ITSM across the board. And most of them have not been implemented correctly. So you're fighting against a lot of information that you don't necessarily have, and preconceived notions and inefficiencies in the past. So really showcasing how easy it is and how quickly better your service is going to be through the self-service portal, and forcing users to go through the self-service portal is going to obviously increase adoption that way. But the more they see how quickly they get service, the things that they can do themselves, and again, the quicker first call resolution that you're going to get through a self-service portal is going to increase adoption. And the more people get good service out of it, the more that they're going to come back to it. And the more things are in one spot as opposed to 4, 5, 6, 7 different portals, the better the adoption is going to be.
Yeah, Chris, thank you. Maybe Andy, if you jump in on that one, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's partly a generation thing, because we're starting to see that, dare I say, the younger generation are more used to the self-help aspect and want to engage in that channel. But in terms of how you boost the uptake, we found sort of one thing is education. So why are we trying to push it? So, for example, quite often we're sort of competing with inbound channels like inbound email. So of course, if we can demonstrate to the end users that the reason we want to guide them through a self-service experience is so that we're getting the right information, and then through reporting sort of demonstrate to them that it's quicker, that we're actually going to resolve their issues and service their requests a lot faster than some of the old channels. So these are some of the things that we use to sort of, if you like, convince the users to try and adjust that. And sometimes it takes the organization, perhaps to be brave and bold and actually commit to removing some of the older channels like inbound email. And so I guess there's an element of carrot and stick here, and this is more the stick, which is you're kind of forcing them into using that channel a little bit too.
Yeah, good. Tom, anything to add to that?
I think I touched on the last presentation, but yeah, it's got to be better than emails or phone calls, or you switch it off. if it's not better than either of those options, then they're not going to use it. And when I say better, it's got to add more value. So you've got to be presenting them with really useful knowledge base articles, a live chat that actually, either a chatbot or a live chat that actually works and they get answers from, not just sending them down a dead end, and announcements and things like that, and just publicizing information. So it's got to offer more, is my personal opinion.
Yeah, good. And maybe Clark then to finish on that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would echo what everyone else has said. However, what also I think to encourage adoption, what you have to do is make sure that your self-service portal is not IT for IT's sake. So we spend an awful lot of time with our customers designing the self-service portal to make sure it's really IT agnostic. And we've even gone into, I personally, when doing some consultancy, has actually got the cleaner in and sat them down in front of the self-service portal and said, can you raise a ticket? Now, is it obvious how you do it? Another big element is as well, don't launch it until you have a critical mass of things like knowledge bank articles in place. We get far too many customers sometimes saying, try and launch it, and I've got 5 articles. It's going to fall flat. You know, if you're trying to do a shift left philosophy and stop the calls coming into the service desk in the first place, then make sure you've got that critical mass. And the last thing I would also say is think about things like enhanced SLAs for portal and pushing that out to your customers as well. You know, backing it up with your service level agreements and your internal measures to really push it forward.
Great stuff. So it sounds like then, based on what we discussed and what we've heard, the demographic shift in an organization towards Y and Z is going to perpetuate itself to some degree. There is going to be some momentum there that's going to do it be organic as well, which is really interesting. And I think we've seen that before, certainly in a consumerized perspective, and that coming into an organization organically would be brilliant. It certainly would have saved an awful lot of grey hairs a long time ago, I think is fair to say. Let's maybe talk about we've talked some of this on the last session. We talked about COVID-19. We talked about the impact and what customers are asking you right now about that. So what are their challenges? What are their biggest challenges? And what are they asking you? Now, we've covered an awful lot today, so I only really want to understand if there's anything else that they're talking about that we haven't covered. Does anybody want to chip in on that one? Or we can close that door pretty much now if we think we've covered it. That's good. That's fine. That's absolutely. We've covered an awful lot, guys. I don't think there's a huge amount of stuff that we can cover. Really, I think more on that one. We've seen an awful lot of if you look at the trends of today, and I don't think there was a built-out schedule. I may be wrong on content. The content has again organically revolved around the simplicity, low code, no code, sort of democratization of some of that, sort of system-wise, and also around enterprise as well, which I think that's very, very clear. Let's maybe talk about then what you're seeing as in innovation, right? And we spoke about this last time. There's an awful lot of sort of new buzzwords and phrases that come up every goodness knows when in IT. And recently I've been reading about the rise of citizen development 2.0. We've covered that pretty much to some degree. Hyper-personalization, micro experiences, decentralization, democracy of services, and move constraint as well. From an innovative sense, how do you each look at what's happening out there and then look at that as something that you can add to a solution? So how do you innovate? How do you actually innovate? And how do you look to future-proof your solutions? And I'm going to ask maybe Clark that one. Sorry, Clark, I've opened up with a big one there.
Throw me under the bus there.
I'm sorry. I can go elsewhere if you want, seriously. Right?
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, that is a continuous battle, because as you rightly said, there is always innovations, always new technology coming out. And you know, as a solution provider, we can't necessarily input everything within our tool, because some of them will be just you know, fads that last 5 minutes, whilst others are, you know, requiring significant. So we have a team of product experts, product managers that look at the marketplace, look at trends within technology, and we make a call as a company as whether we think that's going to be something that's really moving forward. So things, you know, chatbots are a great example, and AI, you know, everyone's chatting about AI, but what does that actually mean? You know, how is that going to be implemented within a tool set, within a customer? Everyone just chucks that term, and it's really getting to the nitty gritty of what that means from an ITSM perspective and how we can build that into our tools. And that is continuous work that we do as a software developer to try and take those terms and inbuild them into our tool moving forward.
Thank you. And Stephen, maybe the same question then. We'll ask each of you guys. So again, you know, consider the time, because I bet you could talk about this all day, okay? So yeah, Stephen, maybe innovation. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, on top of what Clark mentioned, I mean, we definitely do all the same sorts of things here at SysAid, but also voice of the customer surveys, understanding what they're asking for, getting real-time feedback, not just once a year at the end, how are we doing, but what would you like to see? You know, quarterly surveys when we're getting off the conversations. Our CSMs are having QBRs constantly, understanding what the feature requests are. We do have a feature request section within SysAid where our customers can vote on what they want next, and that's where we prioritize where the development's coming out of for the most part.
Great stuff. And Andy, maybe.
Yeah, well, we kind of have 4 channels really. Nothing new in terms of what the other guys have mentioned. We do those things. So we have a team who are looking at the market trends and assessing those, because it's important that obviously we don't want to take our product where we don't really want to take it, or it's going somewhere where we don't believe. But the other channels are, we do have the sort of voice of the customer concept that the others have mentioned too. So we have a regular customer advisory board. We do the same thing with our service provider customers as well, because they have a very different perspective on the world and requirements from service management. And also we have another advisory board with our partners, many of whom have a long history in service management consulting. So in some ways, you know, they've got a lot to bring to the party. They've worked with lots of customers and very, very different and diverse picture of the marketplace.
Lovely. And Pat?
Yeah, so at Axios, we do very similar to what everybody else has been discussing, but we do have an enhancement request that we allow our customers, you know, obviously their opinion is important to us, and what are they looking to see within our solution. So we really work with them closely to ensure that we take a look at that, and because if they're asking for it, I'm sure that there's other existing customers that are asking for the same thing. So we really take a look at that. We used to have the annual North American user forums where we have all their customers come together when we're allowed to travel. So hopefully those will be coming back soon. We get everybody together, you know, all our existing customers, we talk, and it's an open concept, and we provide them with any of the new features that we have, and it's just gets everybody on the same page.
Great stuff. And finally, Tom, on the same question then.
Yeah, we do the same as everyone else. We have these lots of customer feedback, CSMs kind of interact with customers. I think the hardest thing for all the ITSM vendors is knowing which of the, I guess, the hyped kind of innovations are actually going to stay around and are actually useful. There's been loads of these trends over the time, kind of gamification, chatbots, AI, automation, all those kind of areas, and you've got to know which ones are actually genuinely useful and the ones which are just kind of a bit of a fad. So for us, you kind of want to get in there early, but you don't want to get in there too early that it's you jump on something that's not great. So what we tend to do is we log everything. So that means anytime customers ask us, and that could be in support, it could be in sales, it could be in CSMs, it could be developers, whatever it might be, anything anyone's read online, we log it, and then we kind of basically build out heat maps of what people want, and we then kind of weigh that off customers' experience against our kind of expertise, and that kind of tends to drive our roadmap.
Great stuff.
I'd just like to add to that quickly, if you don't mind.
No worries.
So yeah, we obviously do a lot of work around the customer stuff as well, but one thing we've moved to and are really promoting is extensibility of the base software. So instead of it having to actually be built into the base, you can extend the Alemba solution with very little coding to actually allow you to match those trends without necessarily having to come back to base code development from a supplier.
Good. Okay. Well, this is the last question, guys. I think we're about 5 minutes or so, right? And I asked this of the last group. One of our listeners asked it, but it was a I think a fair question to ask in this sort of environment. And the question is simply, what differentiates each of you as a solution provider? Okay, so what differentiates? And Andy, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, so for us, the product's really all about supporting enterprise service management in a collaborative world, and that's one of the reasons the product was born. So It's a true multi-tenant architecture that allows organizations, separate organizations, one might be a customer, one might be a supplier, to enable a trust between them, which is a 10-second job to enable, and immediately the provider can provide services to the customer, and the customer can pass incidents and requests to it. Selective outsourcing is a growing thing, so that's why it was a very big thing that we needed to build into our architecture. So pretty straightforward sort of differentiator from our point of view.
Brilliant, thank you. Tom?
So we're a class of a modern ITSM solution, and we kind of deliver an intuitive platform for both users and agents. Everyone will say the same probably about that, but we really do live and breathe it, and we kind of deliver a platform that people can use, they can grow with it. It's designed to be something that they can self-administer, they can build out, and they can grow with us as well. We include all the features, any future features, non-modular, everything they get now and into the future as well. And it's a partner-first approach we take. We really do create partnerships with our customers.
Great stuff, thank you. Pat, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so at Axios, it's a fit-for-purpose solution, like Tom had mentioned, right? We grow, so you get all the modules that are included: incident, change, problem, knowledge. Everything is there for our customers, and you can turn on what you want to use. So depending on your ITSM journey, just use what you want to use as you start, and as you grow and mature, you can start turning on different modules within Assist.
Brilliant. We'll come on to Clark, if that's okay, Clark.
Yeah, certainly. So Alemba, very much what everyone else has said. However, we pride ourselves on the fact that we are an enterprise service management tool with full-fledged functionality, ITIL 4 certified processes, and the ability to do that in a very, very low structured cost base. So, licensing, etc. Very, very simple from us. What I always would say as well that differentiates us is our consultancy aspect. So when we are implementing solutions with customers, it's just not going in and implementing a solution. It's actually looking at the customer's requirements, what their current solutions are, and looking at best practice and really pushing and making a partnership and pushing back on the customer where we don't think things are running in the most logical way. All our consultants have real world experience. They aren't just Alemba consultants knowing the Alemba tool. They all either run service delivery teams, being change managers, being problem managers, etc. Me myself, I've spent 20 years, everything from a log and flog service desk staff all the way up to incident manager, major incident manager, change, etc. So we're really pushing real world examples and making sure that the solutions we put in place are the best for our customers, and that does mean challenging them and even having arguments quite a few times, but it's all in their best benefit.
Great, thank you. And finally, Stephen, then.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to kind of what everybody else has been saying, we are an EMS, an enterprise management solution first and foremost, and we really let you kind of scale your service desk in an agile and cost-effective way. Multi-layered service management, built-in asset management, advanced automation, service orchestration, specifically for the digital age. Our goals are help you boost productivity, enhance end user experience, as well as agent experience, and really drive real value and business impact. What you're doing today and as we are growing. And one of the other big differentiators with SysAid is we include implementation in our solution. So it's an investment that we make back into our customers. They're making an investment in us. We invest back in them to ensure their success and make sure that they are onboarded correctly the first time with the knowledge and skills to maintain the system moving forward.
Great stuff. Guys, it's been a pleasure today. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for taking the time out to spend some time on some of those questions as well. We're going to move on. So we're almost closed now, actually, after a really, really cool day. So thank you very much for joining us, Luck. And hopefully, as Pat mentioned, hopefully at some point over the next few months, we'll get a chance to assemble some and talk about this in 3D, not 2D, hopefully. So thank you very much indeed, Luck, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Great. Thank